7 names, no games as I run it down the line. We got Kenny Ken, put 100 on the cheese with the streak for the cash. ESPN, Seth Curry with the shot. The prodigy. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, L-Dad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the Buck Wild Problem Child.
Flow Butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the league ambassadors, and we playing to win. At the 2-yard line, and make no mistake, we running it in. Pete Carroll, we see you.
Thank you for visiting 32 Kings Road, hosted by the League Ambassadors. I'm Ambassador Kenny Ken, and it is my pleasure to be here today with my brothers. This is episode 52 of 32 Kings Road, season 3. And on today's show, we will conclude our NFL International Series preview by talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, hopefully for the last time, because there's not much left to discuss with these clowns.
Be back.
We also will look back on week 5, discuss some Odell Beckham, talk about some Aaron Rodgers. We'll also look ahead to week 6 and talk a little bit about our trip to London, because we heading out, guys. It's time to get back over there. But first, let us remind you that you can follow us everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. Please also check out our YouTube channel, League Ambassadors, and please subscribe to that channel. Also, please visit our website, theleagueam.com, where you can see previous episodes of 32 Kings Road, as well as our off-season show, Confirmation Bias. Kev, happy belated birthday, sir.
Thank you, sir.
What you sipping on?
Happy belated birthday to you as well.
Thank you.
I want to wish a special rest in peace to Mr. George Taliaferro, the first black man drafted by the NFL to the Chicago Bears. He died yesterday. Did some great work here in Baltimore. A great man, gave back to the community, passed at age 91. So I feel like it's appropriate, especially in our platform, to give a brother like that some love. May he rest in peace, and may we never forget his legacy.
That's what's up. You know, I love a story that I believe it was Elliot Doyle. He did an article on Mr. Taliaferro back in 2015, and he talked about how in his freshman year at Indiana University, you know, with all the adversity that you could imagine that he was experiencing, how he was ready to come back home. And his dad basically said to him, well, then you should cross your arms across your chest and lie down and die, because I've never had the kinds of opportunities that you will have. So, you know, just another reminder for someone that was such a trailblazer for African Americans in the game of football. Just, you know, how far we've come, and honestly, we still got some more work that needs to be done. Eric Reed. Dad?
Yes, sir.
What you sipping on?
That high-quality H2O from the break room, getting my liver ready for shortage. But what I'm sipping on is quite simple. We're about 36 hours away from being in the same vicinity as Woody's restaurant. And that's what I'm sipping on.
That's what you're sipping on,
yeah.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm sipping on is, by show of hands, and, you know, Redo, fittingly, is out today. His team was on a bye. Raise your hands if your team won on Sunday. Kev? Devin? Y'all get a W?
Both your teams win?
Both of them.
It's easy when you get to have multiple.
Hey, Les, who did your team play this weekend?
The team you was giving up on last week.
Oh, man, I'm just saying. The Los Angeles Chargers are in the playoff hunt. They have the 5th best record in the AFC. And
for the other team.
And I'm excited about that. And we'll see Baltimore. We'll see you guys at the end of the year. I think Kevin's coming out here for that too. Yeah, we'll see you. Junior Blue. What you sipping on, sir?
Well, I'm also sipping on this water because I think it's illegal to drink water in London. I think it's all alcohol all the time.
My man.
So, also, last night, Drew Brees set the all-time passing record. My question for yardage record. My question for you guys is, where do you guys rank him? Because by the time his career is over, he's going to have the most passing yards, most receptions, and the most touchdowns.
He's going to have the most receptions as a quarterback?
The most completions, my bad. Most completions.
He putting in fucking work.
You know, he like Odell Beckham out there.
Foreshadow.
So yeah, where do you guys rank? Where do you see him? I mean, he's accomplishing everything you can accomplish as a quarterback, but is he on the Mount Rushmore?
I think you can't tell the story about the NFL without Drew Brees once it's all said and done. You talk about somebody who wasn't the prototypical quarterback coming out of college. Even going into college, he wasn't recruited by the schools that he should have been recruited to. Like, he came out of Texas, didn't go to Texas, went to Purdue, and Texas has been looking back at that poor decision. But like you said, he'll be the all-time passing leader. He'll be 1, 2, or 3 in touchdowns. He has the highest completion percentage of all time. He's just a professional passer. You talk about someone who, at his height, and Booger McFarland said it last night, he says, I'm 6 foot tall. Drew Brees is 5'10". That's great. And for someone to come in and figure out that he has to change his launch point, which is where he's able to step back in the pocket so he can see over the lineman and throw. He's gone through a lot to be able to sustain this sort of success. So I don't know if he'll necessarily be on the Mount Rushmore, because I think he's also the beneficiary of playing with a offensive genius and an error. And I can't imagine what the record books would look like if Dan Marino played in that same system in this era.
Having said that, though, I mean, I think he's got to be top 5. Because for the things that you mentioned, you know, Devin, like, this guy isn't, if you're drawing up physically what you want your quarterback to look like, you're not drawing up Drew Brees. If you're talking about arm strength, you're not talking about Drew Brees, but somehow this guy has been able to produce. And, you know, particularly older fans love to talk about Doug Flutie. They love to talk about Fran Tarkenton. Well, here is somebody that physically is in that same class, but is producing along the likes of some of the greatest names that have played at that position. So for me, you take that, plus you take what he did to a downtrodden franchise in New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints. And everybody remembers what that was like coming off of Hurricane Katrina and the run that they went on, literally lifting a city, galvanizing an entire city. And you look at what his story was, which we have covered ad nauseum, what his story was and how he got to New Orleans in terms of his shoulder injury. And literally doctors saying we have never seen the type of injury that this guy has, and that there was a 20% chance, 20% chance of him being able to get back into a position to actually be able to use that arm as a quarterback. I think for me, he's top 5, Kev.
Yeah, and I look at it 2 different ways. I look at his contemporaries who we compare him against now, ones who are playing now, and for me, it's Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. And out of those 4, Drew Brees may have all of them beat statistically. Well, outside of Tom Brady's Super Bowls, may have them all beat statistically. But to me, out of those 4, he's the last one I'm picking. And I think some of the knock that comes with him is because he's never won the regular season MVP. Most of his success comes when he's playing indoors, when he plays outdoors at the playoff football on the road. He struggles. But then you look at who you would put on either the Mount Rushmore or the all-time greats. For me, and this is just my personal favorite, I'm going Brady, even though I hate him, Montana, Peyton Manning, John Elway. Drew Brees might scrape the top 10. Statistically, he's there, but I think he benefits from playing from an enhanced NFL in terms of they've changed the rules to benefit the quarterback. I think if he's playing in another era, it's not a fair question to ask, but if he's playing in another era, are those numbers the same? Is he as successful, or does he even have the one Super Bowl that he does have playing up against the other, I would say, standards that other quarterbacks who are held up on a high level have? So to me, he's great, but it's statistically for me.
To me, the fallacy, though, in that is that the rule changes and the era benefits everybody, and yet you still have Blake Bortles. You still have, give me some, shitty run-of-the-mill quarterbacks.
Any quarterback that the Browns have drafted.
Any quarterback that the Browns have drafted. You know what I mean? So you have quarterbacks, and even if you look at the, indoors, in dome, you've had guys like Mark Bulger and, you know what I mean? Like, so there are quarterbacks that have played in this era that could have benefited in the same way. So it's something to be said, not only for excelling, but for being the best, one of the best in that era.
He's definitely excelled, and that doesn't take away from his greatness. But when you're talking about the Mount Rushmore, that's the cream of the crop, the best that has ever done it. So I think what Kevin's argument is that he was the beneficiary of that change. He was able to take advantage of it, so you can't knock him for that. But everything being equal, like you said, out of those top quarterbacks, if you need to win a game, which quarterback are you taking? Are you taking him over those people that you mentioned? I'm not taking him over Elway if I have to win one game. Maybe not even Brett Favre to win one game.
And to his credit, though, you bring up all of those names. The Hall of Fame talent that he played around was all in San Diego. You got Junior Seau, Antonio Gates, possibly Phillip Rivers, as ironic as that is. Something I noticed that was interesting today was tomorrow is the 20-year anniversary of him throwing 83 passes at Purdue, which is just crazy to think of. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He deserves his accomplishments. I'm just saying when you put him next to other people that he's compared against, either whether it's now or in the history of the game, they have more defining accolades. And we'll get to that, but they have more defining accolades than Drew Brees has outside of statistics.
I've played with two guys who actually played with Drew Brees at Purdue, and both of them said that the biggest thing that they remember about him is that he is fiercely competitive. One of the most competitive, and you think about some of the things that he's had to overcome, that sort of bears that out. So kudos to Mr. Brees. Let's get to Moments in Handag, our history segment. Where we will talk about the history of the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you go back to episode 27, we talked about and discussed what we thought were some of the most significant years in the history of the Jaguar franchise. If you go back to episode 7, we talked about some of the most definitive players in Jaguars history, like Tony Boselli, Jimmy Smith, Mark Brunell. And part of the reason why I made the joke earlier about not wanting to talk about these dudes anymore is because they keep going over to London. They're probably going to go over to London. And so what we wanted to do today was look at key position groups, that being on offense, quarterback, wide receiver, running back. And then on the defensive side, we looked at defensive linemen, linebackers, and then in the secondary. And we took some luminaries from each of those within the history of the Jaguar. according to the Jaguars, we took some luminaries from those spots, and we're going to debate which ones we feel like are the best. So we'll start at the quarterback position, and I don't think there's any debate or discussion that Mark Brunell, and this isn't saying much, but Mark Brunell is by far the best quarterback in the history of the Jaguars. Was that right?
Yeah.
So we figured we'd make it a little bit interesting and have a discussion about
number 2 and 3.
Wow.
Or 2 and 6.
Wait a minute, maybe 2 and 6. I don't know that it's even 2. It might be 3 and 5 because you could make an argument for David Garrard.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
I'm saying.
But
we talked about Mr. Byron Leftwich.
Mm-hmm.
And the current quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Mr. Blake Bortles. And just a couple little facts here just to set up the debate. They both have roughly the same completion percentage, less than 60, right at 59% for Bortles, 58% for Byron Leftwich. Their quarterback rating is exactly the same at a rotund.
It might be rotust.
80.
It might be grotesque.
Their quarterback rating both at an 80. Leftwich averaged 195 yards passing per game. Bortles is at 245. Byron Leftwich. Here's the thing. They both have the same amount of wins. 24. Byron Leftwich, 24 and 20. Blake Bortles is 24 and 42. Kevin and Devin.
Yep.
They said that Byron Leftwich was a better Jacksonville quarterback than Blake Bortles is. Brothers Johnson?
Yeah. Unless you can find a way to have Blake Bortles play at Wembley Stadium every week, there's no way I'm not taking. I can't take him. It's Leftwich. You said they have the same amount of wins, but I'm going to take 24 and 20, which is a winning record, over 24 and 42.
And 42. Symmetry, though.
Hey, what do they call that? Transcribe? I don't know.
Transverse? I think transverse.
Something.
Yeah.
Somebody smarter than me.
Not transvestite.
You did that. Kevin.
Kevin, why you taking Leftwich?
Listen, the stats that you read off, Kenyon, as always, I appreciate your research. For this specific question, I did none of that because I would take the Steelers' backup quarterback version of Byron Leftwich before I take the shit that I saw Blake Bortles do on Sunday. Listen, you could take Byron Leftwich with this team could possibly win 2 Super Bowls.
Listen,
Blake Bortles is flushing a Super Bowl caliber roster down the drain, and Les, you gotta explain to me, bro.
Yeah,
how in the world
I gotta say that was my initial thought. My initial thought was, man, if you put Byron, even with the long, because that was the thing about Leftwich. Leftwich, he was starting his throw from behind his kneecaps and bringing it all the way up, which is partly the reason why he got dusted out of the league because he was getting blown up. But if you put Leftwich, Les, on this Jaguar team,
you know where you be?
Where?
IR. That's where he be. He never played 16 games ever. He played 3 seasons where he averaged 13 games each. Then after that, never played more than 5. He wouldn't play.
Wouldn't you take those 13 games?
And then, hold on. Then you got Jimmy Smith and McCardell on the outside for him, right? Who does Bortles have? Don't get it wrong. Bortles is trash. But let's not make
2 years ago.
Let's not make Leftwich out to be a star here.
I don't think that was the question.
Let's not do that. And if you put him on Jacksonville, he'll be hurt. Broken ankle. They'll have to carry him to the line.
Blake Bortles has mobility.
Blake Bortles is the greatest English quarterback to ever play the game. Like Devin said, that is the only thing I'm giving.
He's got caucasity on his side.
Caucasity.
The caucasity for Les to pick this. Byron Leftwich was not the answer, but neither is this. I'm done, bro. Next question.
All right, let's move to the backfield where I think it's a little bit more of a debate.
It's a discussion.
So yeah, I'm about to say
It's not a debate.
No.
Fred Taylor, Fast Freddy, versus Maurice Jones-Drew. And I think actually everyone did take Fred Taylor, so I'll let you guys have at it. I like Maurice Jones-Drew, and that's really difficult for me to say. Given you're right.
What I'll say is I think MJD is the more complete back. He scored more touchdowns.
Talk about it.
But he didn't last as long as someone nicknamed Fragile Fred. And Fragile Fred was able to stay in the league long enough.
That wasn't his fault, though. Keep going.
Either way. And he's the all-time leading rusher for this franchise. And I believe a lot of us put him on the Mount Rushmore in episode 26 or whatever, 7 it was.
27 or 7 is only the 2.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've talked about them enough. But I think for the simple fact that, Jones-Drew was built like a bowling ball, and his career showed that at the end. And like I said, the dude's nickname was Fragile Fred because he couldn't stay healthy, but he stayed healthy long enough to be there for 11 years.
You could turn on NFL Network and see why he was called a bowling ball today.
He didn't put on, some players lose weight after they finish.
Nah, he kept going.
Nah, he kept.
Linemen lose weight.
Yeah, not running back.
Shit.
Kev, Fragile Fred over MJD. You wasn't even alive when Freddie played.
I watched enough Fred Taylor to know. And what I'm not going to do is use that F word in front of Fred's name because I shook that motherfucker's hand.
For real.
And he grabbed all of it. Fred, you Fred the Tank when you come around my way. Don't mix me in with them. But I went with Fred because the point you mentioned, his longevity. He was there for 11 years, 7,000-yard seasons. 7 playoff games, back before it was cool to be a Jags fan. Remember, they were like the forgotten stepchild of that division when you going up against the Ravens, the Steelers, the Titans, back when they had an identity. And then you look at the all-time,
Love the recall,
rushing list. Fred is, 17th?
15th.
15th. Okay, and how many names on that list above him are Hall of Famers? How many guys below him are Hall of Famers? The fact that he's not there yet, I think, shows that he was underappreciated, but for the sake of this conversation, he's definitely the better running back. But I could see where you're coming from, Keenan.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, MJD, let's get down to it. You want to talk about legendary achievement? Maurice Jones-Drew actually led the league in rushing. 2011, he had 1,600 yards. You look at Fred's best stretch of his career is a 3-year stretch from 2002 to 2004. He had 4,100 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns. Maurice Jones-Drew, his biggest stretch, 3 years, 2009 and 2011, he had 4,300 yards. He had 28 touchdowns. He finished first in touchdowns, and to me, touchdowns lead more to wins than yards. So while Fred Taylor may be the franchise leader in yards, Maurice Jones-Drew is the franchise leader in touchdowns, and he also finished third and still is third in receptions. To your point, Devin, a much more complete running back. His career did end prematurely because of a bad foot Liz Frank injury, which he talked about that was basically a misdiagnosis, and he didn't listen to his own intuition, and he came back too soon and basically was never the same. But I don't hold that against him. It wasn't as if he was perpetually injured. I mean, again, he was a bowling ball, so he was dishing as much punishment, and really to the surprise of everyone in the NFL, he was a second-round draft pick because they all thought that he was only going to be a return specialist, and he proved everyone wrong. So whereas with Fred, I know we said fragile, and that's what it was, he missed games, he couldn't stay healthy enough. Maurice Jones-Drew was healthy until he had an unfortunate injury. So for me...
He was healthy until he wasn't.
So for me, I mean, Maurice Jones-Drew, he was that guy for the franchise.
All I know is Fred won me a fantasy title. So I put him up there because of that. Also, like Chef Curry said, he's a chief diplomat. He's part of the family.
You're right, he is part of the family. I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry.
Disrespectful.
We got pictures with Fred. I ain't never seen MJD come
nowhere,
through for
and
us.
he live out here.
He too busy.
Don't do it.
All right. We'll move to receivers. Basically, the two best receivers in franchise history. We've talked about these guys before, mentioned them in passing. But let's make some decisions here. Is it Thunder or is it Lightning? Thunder, Keenan, McCardell, or is it Lightning, Cocaine Cowboy, Jimmy Smith? Everyone had Jimmy Smith, including me. Let's just be honest. I tried to do the McCardell thing, and I mean, and this is less about stats. This is just about how that offense operated. McCardell was the one that was making all of the difficult catches. He was the guy that was taking the safety across the middle of the field. Jimmy Smith basically ran deep routes. He caught everything, and he was fast, but McCardell was the guy doing the dirty work, and he was the guy that offense took off once he got to the team because he had been in the league longer than Jimmy Smith. He was the one that made that offense go, but Jimmy Smith, point blank period, is the best receiver in team history.
By far. Like, you go choose a possession receiver. McCardell was good, but he was their
Don't
possession.
say he was just a possession
He was their
receiver.
possession receiver compared to blowing the roof off Jimmy Smith.
Literally. I see what
Yeah,
you did.
Jimmy did fed time for coke and gun charges. So anybody that can come back from that, to me, is a GOAT, man. I mean, he's got the franchise record for catches, yards, touchdowns, 7 consecutive seasons with over 1,000 yards. He's got the team record for, 1,636 and 99. And he surpassed that mark 9 times on his time there. So for me, I mean, you got to go with Jimmy. He was the hog for the longer stretch than the time that McCardell spent there.
I mean, Jimmy's numbers are borderline Hall of Famer. Like, at least let's have a discussion about it. And it's hard to stay with one team in that position for as long as he did, for 11 years. And he was so good that they could allow for Keenan to leave.
I didn't realize
they also were never the same when Keenan left as well. When he left in 2011, things changed tremendously.
I didn't realize he was only there 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about Jimmy, too, he almost died. It's the reason why the Cowboys, he was drafted.
More than we know.
That's funny. He was actually drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, and he had appendicitis, and he had an emergency appendectomy, but there was an infection that resulted from that, and it was a near-fatal situation, and the Cowboys cut him. He was actually out of football for a year, and then Jacksonville kind of brought him on as a flyer, and then
it worked.
And then he took off. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, where, first of all, we'll start at the line. Hurricane Henderstroud, Mr. John Henderson, and Mr. Marcus Stroud, who, listen, when Jacksonville was rolling under Tom Coughlin, those two beasts in the middle, they were the catalyst for that entire team. Let's see. Les, you've got Marcus Stroud. Actually, I think you guys all had Marcus Stroud?
I think they had.
I was a wash.
You were a wash. Yeah. We'll start with the wash.
Okay.
Because you couldn't make a decision.
No. Well, it's... Is there one without the other? You have to think about that. They played right next to each other. So I think they both were the beneficiary of the other one's success, because can't double two people. So depending on the matchup, they would eat. So and they played basically the same tenure. One came a year earlier, the other one left a year earlier. So they were there basically the same amount of time. One of them had one more Pro Bowl than the other. So to me, I think it was a wash. They benefited from each other.
Junior Blue, why'd you go with Stroud?
And that's why Stroud had the one more Pro Bowl. That's why I went with him. I mean, just think about 6'6" and 6'7" as your defensive tackles. I mean, you were right. They played off of each other.
313, 330.
You're not running up the middle. So, I mean, I picked Stroud just because I had to pick one. But, I mean, they like Dev said, it should have been a wash.
I picked
a couple washes.
Yes. I picked Henderson because of 2007. 2007 was the year. It was primarily John Henderson that was playing. Stroud was injured most of the year and had a suspension. And for me, I just remember the commentators talking a lot about how Henderson, normally the defense that they ran, it was a 3-4 defense underneath, and that's typically a 2-gap defense. And what that really means is that the nose tackle would line up directly over the center, and he's responsible for both A gaps. John Henderson in 2007 was 3-gapping, which means that he was responsible not only for the 2 A gaps, but he was also responsible for the B gap, and that he was dominant that year. He was a Pro Bowl player. He was, I think he finished top 5 in NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2007. And for me, anybody who gets revved up for a game by getting slapped in the face, that's who I'm going with. Kev?
That was the deal breaker for me. To let not only just anybody, but a big white man let a little white dude slap him in the face before every game. He got my vote. But
try it again.
You got me. Big black dude, small white. See, this is what racism does to you. But no, I did look. You guys are right. Stroud had one more Pro Bowl, but Henderson had, I think, 7.5 more sacks. But to Devin's point, you can't have one without the other, and those two are almost interchangeable.
And 100 more tackles. Mm-hmm. Linebackers. We've got, and this is a shout out. First of all, a couple of things. One, shout out to Calais Campbell, who, if he continues on, will probably go down as the best defensive tackle. Let's also do a shout out as we move to linebackers to Telvin Smith, who was well on his way to probably being the best linebacker in Jags history, particularly if they have the sort of success that they're set up for as a team. But Mr. Darryl Smith, and Mr. Paul Posluzsny. And I was thinking that you Baltimore boys would actually have a special appreciation for Mr. Daryl Smith. Let's see. Kev, you had Daryl Smith, right? But Les and Devin chose Mr. Posluzsny. Why did you go with Mr. Smith?
I think it was more so because what he accomplished based on the pieces around him. Like Paul had that young he was around a young Jags team that towards the tail end of his career. But I mean, you got guys like Ramsey, like Campbell that he had last year, will really hold him up. And I think that when you're around great players like that, you have the ability to enhance what you do on the field. Daryl Smith was not around that same quality of talent, especially in those struggle years for Jacksonville. But I mean, he's there for 9 years. In 2010, he became their all-time leader in tackles. 3 playoff games in Jacksonville, which says a lot if you followed them before the last couple years. Paul kind of went out on that tail end when he knew he was the odd white man out on that defense.
It was, for me, when Daryl Smith, during his heyday, it was Ray Lewis, London Fletcher, and then it was Daryl Smith. And no one really talked about him much because he was down in Jacksonville and they were a trash-ass organization.
Don't let Omar hit his tape.
But, Pro Football Focus had Daryl Smith as the second best 4-3 outside linebacker in 2009 or 2011. He was the best graded outside linebacker 4-3 in 2009. As Kevin said, he led the Jags as he left the Jags as the franchise leading tackler. Best season, had 107 tackles, 3.5 sacks. He was not only a good tackler, not only a good leader of the defense, but he could also rush the passer. And so for me, I just remember 51 on the Jags being that main anchor, main leader of the defense, and why I thought he was better than Posluzsny. Les, Devin, you guys had a different opinion. Junior Blue?
I remember watching the Jags for some reason. It was MJD there. And their defense wasn't good, right? Wasn't good at all. They had an offense, but I distinctly remember Posluzsny being all over the field, dominating in his time, middle linebacker, in the Zach Thomas mode.
Yeah.
And he was all over the field.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that with Daryl Smith. So, I mean, you go look at the numbers. Their numbers are comparable. And the fact that he did play all the way up until it was 1 year he was surrounded by a great defense. Kev.
Yeah, Kevin, I was squinching a little bit when you said, I was like, whoa.
So I'm just saying, I remember Posluzsny being all over the field, and that's why I chose him. I don't remember Daryl Smith being all over the place.
And for me, I think Daryl Smith is more talented, but the question is who is the better Jaguar player. And I think that Daryl Smith's sort of attributes in his career kind of got enhanced when he moved on to a new city and actually came after a legend in Ray Lewis. But if you look at him, Paul, as a Jag, he accomplished more in less time. He had more tackles, more interceptions, and he had a defensive touchdown. Daryl Smith didn't have one until he got to the Ravens. So he's the only one of the two to make a Pro Bowl as well.
Let's move to the second.
Quick though, Les, I think the difference though is key to what you said was for some reason while Paul was there, you were watching the Jaguars. While Daryl was there was no fucking reason to ever be watching them, and that's probably why his career got overlooked.
The secondary, we've got Rasheem Mathis, who is arguably the best defensive player in the history of the Jacksonville Jaguar organization. Versus Jalen Ramsey, who, he's a special kind of guy in a lot of different ways. And I think it says something to his talent that he's even in this discussion, because I think of all of the sort of discussions and debates that we've had, he is the only modern day Jaguar that we actually have in this discussion. Could have put Donovan Darius up there, secondary, but we went with Ramsey, and I think all of you guys are taking Ramsey over Mathis. Now, I hope that you're not holding Rasheem Mathis's last final years against him, because when you think about his stats, he 30 career interceptions. He is a Pro Bowler. He had 146 yards, 46 yards worth of interceptions in his Pro Bowl season. I mean, he is the franchise leader in defensive touchdowns, passes defended. He played his entire career with the Jaguars, and I definitely remember during that Mel Tucker defense where you had Stroud and Henderson, you had Darryl Smith, the lockdown corner that made it all work was Rasheed Mathis. So I'm just saying, where's Ramsey at with this?
That's not why I chose it. The question is, would you rather be? Right now, I'd rather be Jalen. The reason,
Devin, you have turned this question around 3 times.
No, it's the same question.
No one said who would you rather be.
Yeah, it doesn't.
No,
you sure?
I'm positive.
Let's check the group text.
No, it's not that.
But
it's who's better.
It was anyway. Either way,
who would you rather be? Doesn't even what.
Is there, but we'll talk about it later. Right now, Jalen Ramsey has accomplished what Mathis has already.
Yeah.
Pro Bowl, he was only a Pro Bowl once. And he was only a All-Pro once. And he accomplished that much faster. So as long as he stays healthy, he will surpass him. Now, don't get me wrong, Mathis was a model of consistency, and he has I believe he has the most interceptions in the franchise history.
Yeah. Yep.
Jalen doesn't get picks. He only has 6 right now, I believe. So he'll have to do a lot of work to catch him, but I'd take Jalen right now in this young career over Mathis.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I approached it. It's against, how I usually would do something like this, but I looked at Jalen's potential and what we know he can be in this league and what he has done in this league. Given the rule changes to benefit the offense, he almost has that Darrelle Revis-like approach where, like Devin said, he doesn't have picks because guys don't come at him, and rightfully so. I mean, not to overlook what Mathis did. I mean, you watch his tape when he was playing and he did come up with interceptions, the way he broke at the ball, he attacked it like a wide receiver would. He was definitely talented. But again, those were years where people weren't necessarily watching the Jags. But I'm going with Ramsey because of the upside and the fact that we know this defense is Super Bowl capable, but there's just that one guy holding them back.
Who would that be, Kevin?
Mr. Blake Bortles.
Junior Blue.
Well, I looked at it like this. Like you said, 2 seasons in the league, he already has as many Pro Bowls, as many All-Pro teams. Then you look at how he covered. We all saw it in person. I think Keenan was more focused on that.
Why was he more focused? Why was he more focused, Les?
Leave that alone. He was focused, though.
They gave me some gummy bears.
He was focused on that matchup. And then you just think about he goes out and talks shit and then follows it up every week before the season.
He got to see this past weekend, though. But
you get beat once.
Yeah.
He stopped it like I saw 3 or 4 breakups.
You know what? You know what it was though. It was in his head that he didn't want to get beat. This is what happens when you talk too much.
And he 10 yards off.
Well, not only that, but he lost technique because honestly, when he got beat, it was because he was trying to be grabby and trying to get his hands on him instead of just trusting his technique. Mm-hmm. When he played solid technique, he was fine. Except for the one time he got beat, which is fine. He got beat on a double move by a dude that legit runs a 4.2. Yeah. But he held his own. Devin has pulled up the chat conversation.
Don't worry about it. We can move on.
I don't know. I must have been under the influence because that's what I said.
That's all right.
Yeah, okay, well, let's move on to hot topics. How about that? It's time for some football tea. And our hot topic discussion takes us first to Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to paint the picture for you guys, and you tell me what's going on. In the summer, Mike McCarthy, he fired Alex Van Pelt, who was Aaron Rodgers' quarterback coach. Didn't consult Aaron Rodgers. Jordy Nelson inexplicably got cut, and I must say, Junior Blue, I need to go and pick up Jordy Nelson, it looks like, in fantasy.
And how's Crabtree working out for y'all?
Keep going.
And as the Green Bay Packers have done since Aaron Rodgers has been there, they didn't bring in any help at running back. Game 1 comes against the Chicago Bears, and what happens? They add Khalil Mack, crash down on him. He gets hurt. He's got a sprained knee. And so then we hear at week 5 reports that Aaron Rodgers is frustrated with the offense. Might I also add that before the season started, or right when the season started, is when Aaron Rodgers got his money. So the question I have for you guys is, have we finally gotten to the point where Mike McCarthy's days are numbered?
Well, let's do the math here. You have a gentleman who has the most guaranteed money in NFL history calling his shot so passive-aggressively that we can't but hear it, right? Yeah, I think it's time.
See this hot.
It's on fire.
Yeah, and that plus the fact, I mean, just look at their roster. I mean, they've had nonstop injuries at wide receiver, no consistent run game. The defense is terrible. McCarthy's been this coach for 11 years, and for some reason you would think that a guy like Aaron Rodgers in this NFL, I've been talking about it all show, how the game is adjusted to benefit someone like him and like McCarthy. He hasn't adjusted. As much as we criticize Andy Reid, he's made the adjustments to succeed in today's NFL. And it's almost like this is the catch-22 with having a great quarterback in today's NFL. You're going to put everything on his shoulders. But as we know, and as history shows, a quarterback can't win it by itself. This isn't the NBA. You got to have the surrounding pieces around you to get it done. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't had that. If I was him and being compared against guys like we mentioned earlier, and your legacy comes down to how many Super Bowls you win, it's not happening right now. And he sees the writing on the wall. Just like Omar did.
Yeah.
So I would say this really quick, that the things that he's putting them on blast on are only things that coaches can correct.
Right.
He's not doing what somebody else that we're about to talk about is doing as far as pointing out player mistakes or highlighting players. He's talking about control.
Yeah.
And there's only one person that can control that.
Right.
So I'm talking to you.
The other thing, the other thing that's interesting too, to your point, Kevin, we talked about Drew Brees and Tom Brady and contemporary Peyton Manning. You know the name that didn't come up? Aaron Rodgers. His name, when you ask quarterbacks, when you ask football players, which quarterback would you have, they all say, I'd have Aaron, ball for ball.
Because he's 30,000 yards behind him because he stays getting hurt.
So,
pound for pound, he's the most talented, but he's not the most accomplished.
So let's do some weekend shout outs. First of all, let's stop in Buffalo. Listen here, man. We all know that Buffalo is a trash ass team. We know it. There's no question about it. But somehow they are 2-3. Can somebody tell me how is that possible? Yeah. How are the Buffalo Bills 2-3?
It's the NFL. Shit happens, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, but the shit happened to them against they beat two playoff teams last year.
Shit happens.
I don't know, man. I don't have an answer.
Junior Blue?
Have you guys watched any of the games?
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched the
week one.
The first one.
They watched. No. I'm talking about the games that they won since they put Josh Allen in. Like he knows how to play. Like that.
Why did he say that? Why did he say that was a
that shocked me.
Exactly.
That shocked me when I saw him. Believe me, I have a quarterback who wants to throw interceptions in the end zone from the one when it's covered. Josh Allen sees something covered, he throws the ball away or he runs. I didn't think he could run.
Now, you had them in season preview, right?
Yeah.
And we both laughed about how terrible that roster was.
It's still terrible.
It's still terrible.
But they're playing well. They're coached well. They're playing well.
Listen, and that's what I was going to say is that Sean McDermott has those guys playing for him on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. They are playing. They are playing well for him. Tre'Davious White is actually one of the best corners in football. No one talks about it. But let's not pretend like they've got some hidden personnel pieces. No. They're just playing really inspired football on the defensive side of the ball. And I also think it's this. To your point, Kevin, Minnesota, who I've talked about before, but then also Tennessee. I think it's a case of if it's the wrong team that is going up against Buffalo that thinks that they are better than what they are, they're going to lose.
They're going to lose. And truth be told, like their next couple of games are the Texans, Indy, Patriots and Bears, but Jets and Jaguars. So they can get 3 wins out of that.
What's funny is they'll lose all those games because none of those teams are drinking their Kool-Aid.
Right.
See, Tennessee, Texans
don't think that
they're not drinking. Nah, they're not because they got off to a bad start. And honestly,
you don't think they can beat Indy?
The Texans better drink their Kool-Aid. I picked them bitches to go 10-6.
They can, but I don't think that they will. Like I'm saying that my point is that the teams that they have lost, that the teams that have lost to them are teams that were, Tennessee had just come off of beating the Eagles at home. Minnesota, again, coming into the season thinking they hot shit. So I think it's that I don't think any of those teams are thinking of themselves more than what they are. Another weekend shout out. The Kansas City Chiefs defense. Question I got for you guys, is it maybe turning a corner?
Can y'all stop it? They played against Blake. Listen, the four of us could have been in the Chiefs secondary, and two of us would have went home with an interception. Next question. Don't waste our time.
I'm taking
man.
it back to the house.
Can y'all don't waste my time. I got a flight to catch.
Nobody? Damn it.
No.
What?
I'll raise my hand. Beat me to it.
Well, let's go to you guys' favorite quarterback then, since you wanna just get right to the point. Mr. Baker Mayfield. The question I have for you guys is, one, how far can he take them? And is this time different in Cleveland? We'll let you guys talk about it. You had a front row seat.
Oh, ain't this a bitch? You're going to have a front row seat next week.
We gonna whoop that ass.
In Cleveland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
No, Baker can play. He definitely has the right. He has the it quality, what the Deshaun Watson we thought had coming into this year, what we knew he had last year. First of all, the Browns defense is good.
Right.
We've been saying that for a while.
Yeah.
And the Browns are a lot better than people think they are. And I think we've been saying that for a while. And now it's finally come to fruition because they finally have a stable piece in place. I mean, they only scored one touchdown versus us, but they were able to get it done on the defensive side, and our game plan wasn't the best.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, they should be 5-0.
Real
Yes. Yep.
You know, if they didn't brown when the Browns usually brown. But I think they can get to 6-10, 7-9 if they don't continue to lose games down the stretch. To Baker's credit, he made that play in overtime, extending it, getting out the pocket with his legs, firing downfield. But we're not going to sit up here and act like he played a great game against us. If you, which I know you didn't, sit there and suffer through that bullshit like me and Devin did. It was a terrible game. He made a play when it needed to be made, and he deserves credit for it.
Junior Blue?
Hey, they put up 42 points against us. So make feel real.
You right. You actually stole a win, huh?
Yeah.
So
okay, let's move on to Mr. Odell Beckham Jr. There was an interview that aired this weekend
weird.
on a network with Lil Wayne, which I didn't quite understand. But anyway,
Carter 5 dropped.
Okay, cross promotion, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically threw Eli Manning under the bus. Now, to be fair to him, he didn't lie. He didn't tell the truth.
Where's the lie?
He didn't tell the truth either, because instead of him just saying Eli is the problem, the question was asked, is the problem with your quarterback? And his response was...
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question. I don't know. Okay? We all from the outside know that Eli is the problem, but are the Giants regretting paying this guy? Because again, like with the Aaron Rodgers situation, Aaron Rodgers has gotten his money. It's the most guaranteed money ever. So he's going to be entitled and emboldened to speak out. And I think you've got the same situation with Odell Beckham. The difference is Odell Beckham is a wide receiver, which wide receivers have the stereotype of being prima donnas and being troublemakers on the team. Me, very selfish. And it's in a huge market. What do the Giants do at this point? Are they regretting making this deal?
I think they're regretting not drafting a quarterback.
Uh-oh.
I think that's their issue, not with Odell. I mean, when they signed him, they knew who he was. They know that if there's problems, if they're losing, guess what's going to pop up? Odell the last couple years. And that's what's starting to happen. He was talking about the offense last week before the interview.
But then on the flip side, Odell knew this shit too. Like, if you knew you were in a place where you weren't going to shine, and you knew after they didn't draft Eli's successor, you decided to sign there.
Yeah,
so I mean, you kind of got to take the good with the bad here.
Yeah, my thing is that a lot's being made from this interview, as it should be, but I hate the double standard where you said that it was because he's a wide receiver. He's not in a position to make those comments because of that, and I think that's bullshit. He's the best talent that they have on that squad. But if ESPN asked those questions, they were leading questions, and then you get mad at him for answering them in a truthful manner. We always want athletes more than the bulletin point, give 110% and all this shit. And when he actually gives the answer, people are up in arms about it. And like you said, Eli isn't long for this league.
No.
And it's apparent. I mean, they have issues on the offensive line, yes. But, I mean, when you're talking about I feel like I work too hard, I see other top receivers, I want to go over the top of people. And then he says, I got to take a slant 60. So I think I'm working too hard. But the thing that got me really, really curious about this interview is he kept talking about that little person inside of him that's trying to break out, like David Banner and the Hulk.
Oh, man.
Or Bruce Banner. And I'm just curious.
Both apply here, Devin.
What is he getting at? Because they talk about his demonstrative demeanor.
Who apparently the little demon in him jumped into Sterling Shepard. Because Sterling Shepard, I don't know if you guys saw, but he threw a tantrum.
He was wild.
He also threw a tantrum on the sideline this weekend. And I think that's the thing that you've got to worry about. You've already got Pat Shurmur 4 games in speaking Spanish and Italian and screaming at the press. I don't know that this is going to end well for anyone. And I'll go back to something that I said, I think, during confirmation bias. The Cleveland Browns not taking Saquon Barkley at 1 messed up 2 franchises. Not only theirs, but it also messed up the Giants.
Saquon and Baker.
They could have had Saquon and Baker. Say it again. Okay? Finally, Jay Ajayi. Now, on the way to blowing out his ACL, or finding out that his ACL was blown up, he said, this offense, talking about the Philadelphia Eagles offense, is confusing. What's going on in Philly? They're 2-3.
Philly misses that blunt.
Really?
Yeah.
You think it's the blunt, huh?
I think the blunt. Philly is known for their blunts, and they don't have it.
I see how you did that.
You like that?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with Frank Reich leaving. I think that
and Pat Shurmur. Let's just call it out.
And
a lot of brain trust,
right? So you have all the injuries going into preseason, and essentially the first 4 games of the season was their off season.
Mm-hmm.
So they're injured. Their line is trash right now. Carson Wentz has been sacked 12 times in 3 games. The defense has regressed. They're -4 in the turnover differential.
Their secondary is trash. I've been telling Skinny that all season.
Yeah.
He don't want to hear it. That secondary is...
And I think the Super Bowl hangover is real.
Yep.
And they are the hunted right now.
That's a whole lot of everything. That's a whole lot of 6 and 10 is what that sounds like, Kevin.
Yeah, to Devin's point, the Super Bowl hangover is real. We've seen the same thing. A veteran team, a deep team, you get kind of purged, if you will. I mean, they pretty much brought back the same roster, but guys weren't healthy. They weren't healthy at the same time. They can't run the ball now. Their depth was at strength last season, and they can't next man up every week. So
every position.
Every position, every week, and that's pretty much what they have to do now. But if I'm them, I'm making a phone call about a few miles or so east. Like, hey, we got 2 first-round picks next year. Le'Veon, what's really good?
West.
But can they pay them? But Junior Blue, can they pay Le'Veon
West.
with Fletcher's deal, and they're going to have to pay Carson Wentz?
Yeah, I don't know. They should. I mean, they're coming. Their defense is still pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So you add a running back like that who takes pressure off the defense and takes pressure off of Carson Wentz, who is not as accurate and not on point like he was. He still seems like he's struggling. Yeah, he still seems like he's struggling. I think also you have a year of watching and scouting these plays that they were running last year, all these RPOs that they ran last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not working the same because you now have film.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, the offense doesn't seem as fluid. There doesn't seem like there's as much flow. There's not a lot of dictating going on, but that could also have everything to do with what you said, Devin. No Pat Shurmur, no Frank Reich. Next man up, whoever that is on the
Carson Wentz not ready.
Pete Carmichael or whoever the other
Nick
offensive
Foles
coordinator is
who he is.
Yeah,
the
so
pumpkin, they turn back into a pumpkin.
Yeah.
sounds like a whole lot of 6 and 10.
Yeah.
And after all of that, 6 and 10 might win that side.
Trash.
That's actually true.
NFC East is trash.
Right now they are. So let's get into our segment All In with Ken. which is sponsored by MyBookie. That's MYBOOKIE. Omar, you're not here to say .com, but it's .com. Minimum deposit of $50, and MyBookie will match your bet up to 100%, up to $1,000. Use the promo code 32KR. Kenny Ken, take it away.
All right, we're doing really good. We were 2 out of 3 last week. Let's go for a perfect 3-0 this week. First of all, in our Funky Monkey game of the week,
the Funky Monkeys is coming.
We've got the Monday Night Football matchup between the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. Arizona just got their first win against the 49ers, and the 49ers were at home. Now they've got to go play Green Bay. Just take Green Bay to win. Green Bay is going to beat the dog shit out of them because what?
The Funky
Monkeys is coming.
Then we've got Jacksonville versus Dallas. Dallas is averaging 16 points per game. The Jacksonville Jaguars are averaging only 17 points per game on the road. Blake Bortles is like Ben Roethlisberger. He's great at home. He's terrible on the road. The game total is 40.5. Take the under in that matchup. Take the under, Jacksonville versus Dallas. And then finally, I like the Indianapolis Colts. They are 2.5-point underdogs against the New York Jets. I like the Indianapolis Colts to cover on the road. I actually like them to win the game. No Buster Screen, no Trumaine Johnson. And the New York Jets just had a big upset this Sunday, beating the Denver Broncos at home. This will be a classic letdown game. The Colts have 10 days to prepare. Take the Colts to cover. Take the under in Jacksonville and Dallas. Take the Green Bay Packers to win. 32KR is the promo code. MyBookie.com. Put $100 down and thank the league ambassadors. Let's get to our game picks. And first of all, we will start in reverse. And we'll start with the Sunday night football game, which is the Kansas City Chiefs at 5-0. Going up to New England to play the New England Patriots. Right now, we look at our season records. We're all pretty close with the exception of Omar. He has quickly assumed the last position. Kevin.
I know him and Les are coming close.
Well, we know how this story goes. It's 3 years in the making. Kevin's in first place, but only by a game. I had a pretty good Sunday with 10 wins. We'll start Kansas City, New England, 5-0. New England at home, just coming off of beating Indianapolis Colts. They've got 10 days to prepare. Mm-hmm. Who you got, Dad?
Patriots. I'm not betting against Belichick with that much time to prepare.
Yep.
Okay. Junior Blue?
Same thing, and at home.
Wow. Kev?
Until someone beats Kansas City, I'm picking them.
I'm with you, sir. I'm taking Kansas City as well. Andy Reid, as the Chiefs coach, beats the brakes off of Bill Belichick. And I don't think he has the horses to confuse Patrick Mahomes like he normally does young quarterbacks. I like the Chiefs as well. We've got an AFC North battle between the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are coming off of a thrashing. They thrashed the Atlanta Falcons, who, my God, the train is off the tracks.
There is no next man up.
There is no next man up for them. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers going against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are in first place at 4-1. The game is at Cincinnati. Junior Blue, who you got?
Cincinnati at home. They're playing well in how's Pittsburgh's corners?
Trash.
Garbage.
Garbaggio.
That.
Although the Steelers have the Bengals number, always and
Talk
forever,
about it.
They do.
Talk
but
about it.
I'm going against the Bengals. They're the better team right now, and they're at home, and that defense in Pittsburgh.
I'm going with the Steelers. I think Ben Roethlisberger only plays well on the road in one place, at Paul Allen. I like the Steelers in an upset to make everybody have 2 losses in that division, and then that division gets to be really interesting. Kev, who you got?
Yeah, Devin and Les, I actually live in the AFC North, and Cincy ain't beat Pittsburgh since 2015. I'm going with the Steelers.
Yeah. Kevin! Hey, man.
Unfortunately.
Make sure all that shit's on the sheet.
All right, right. Right, don't change it between now and...
When I saw Fournette was out, I was like, ugh.
And then finally, the game in London, of which we are going to see Junior Blues.
Hey, they still my squad. I stick with them.
Oakland Raiders will take on the Seattle Seahawks. I've been saying for a few months, ever since we figured out that this was the game that we were going to go to, Russell Wilson has this game circled on his calendar because he remembers, and I remember, how John Gruden absolutely trashed him on draft day when the Seattle Seahawks took Russell Wilson. This is not even going to be close. And you add to the fact that the Raiders are not leaving Oakland until I think Saturday morning. And I'm only kidding about that. It is Friday. I got Seattle in a blowout. Dad?
You stole my thunder. All I needed to know was that the Raiders weren't arriving until Saturday. Because we did that shit last year. And we arrived on Thursday.
Right.
And we knew from the opening bell that shit was ding ding.
Ding ding.
Seahawks.
Kev?
Man, we really got to pick this bum fight.
Hey.
Listen,
We beat Cleveland.
I'm sorry. You held us down.
The refs beat Cleveland.
You held us down when we were in London last year. I'm picking Seattle, but I got this nice. This on your drink, baby. I got the first bottle of Highland Earl Less is yours, and it's on me.
That's really good. Okay, Junior Blue, you got to give us a reason to want to go to the game.
Hey, because they are my squad, and the league ambassadors need some get back in London. Don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
So, Oakland, win the game.
All right. I don't know.
Man, hey.
So on that note,
Speak, believe, receive it. Speak, believe, receive it.
Hey.
Wait for it.
he will do it. He's just not going to do it for the Raiders. On that note, we're on our way to London. We can't wait to get there. UK folks, we will see you. We'll be there. We're in Kensington. We'll actually, man, I'm excited because we've got some media credentials, and so we're going to talk to some players at the practice. We're going to have a good time. And anything else you guys want to add before we get out of here?
I'm excited. I got about 80 euros left for London.
Kevin got European food stamps.
Hey, don't throw away them coins. Them shits are worth money.
They all over here too. Come on, what y'all want?
We talking about Captain Frugal.
I just need everybody to remember, right, left, right.
The person that we need to remember that is not here.
Yeah, he's not here.
Mind the gap.
Mind the gap.
All right, this has been another episode of 32 Kings Road. We thank you for checking in and stopping in with us. As a reminder, follow us everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. Please check out our website, theleagueam.com. Please check out Diplomatic Immunity, which is our blog spot that is on that website. Anybody can make submissions. Please, we want to hear from you fans. The League Ambassadors exist as a representation for you, the fans. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, League Ambassadors. We will see you when we get back on the other side. We're going to have a lot of content that we're going to post on our social media. Cheerio!
Cheers,
7
mate.
games, no
Highland
games, as I
Earl
run
is
it down the
real.
line. We got Kenny Ken put 100 on a tees with the streak for the cash. He ESPN. Seth Curry with the shot. The prodigy. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, Eldad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the Buck Wild Problem Child.
Flow Butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the League Ambassadors, and we playing to win at the 2-yard line. And make no mistake, we running it in.